You wake up with a headache, reach for a painkiller pill, take a sip of water, and then continue your new day. Now imagine you wake up with that headache 50,000 years ago. No medicine, no doctors, no internet to self-diagnose various rare diseases. Just you, the pain, and a cave full of people who also know nothing about what is happening inside your skull. And that is exactly what we think about ancient people, miserable, frail, and dying young. Today we have hospitals, antibiotics, surgery, vaccines, all the things ancient people did not have. So naturally we live much longer than them. But here is the strange thing, and I need you to really stop and think about this for a moment. When scientists actually measure ancient human bones, analyze their DNA, and study tribes still living in the old way today, they discover the same thing. Cleaner cardiovascular systems, healthier guts, stronger bones, and lifespans almost exactly the same as ours. Not close. Almost exactly the same. There is something wrong with those findings. And the reason is not just one thing. It has never been just one thing. There are many layers of explanation, each subsequent layer even more concerning than the previous one, and together they paint a picture of something we have lost, something older than modern medicine, older than agriculture, older than anything we usually call progress. Let us begin. Begin with something that sounds like a small mistake, but is actually the foundation of this entire story. The number 30 years old is wrong. Not wrong in the sense that people made it up, but wrong in the sense that it is measuring something completely different from what we think it is measuring, and that confusion has shaped the way we think about health, medicine, and progress for many generations. Everyone knows this number. The average lifespan of ancient people was 30 to 35 years old. It appears in textbooks, in documentaries, in every debate about how miserable the old days were. Hearing it immediately brings a feeling of relief, that it is good we no longer live like that. The problem is that number is technically completely correct, but in meaning it is completely wrong. This is what is really happening inside that 30 years old number, child mortality. In many ancient societies, half of the children born did not live past their 5th year. Not because adults did not try, but because infections and diseases were an inevitable part of childhood at that time. And when 50% of children died before age 5, the average lifespan of the entire population group was pulled down to 30, even though all the adults in that group were living healthily until 70. If half the class got 0 points on the test, the class average would be terrible. But that does not mean no one got high scores. The 30 years old number does not measure the lifespan of ancient adults. It measures their child mortality rate. Those are two completely different things. In 2007, Michael Gervin and Hillard Kaplan published the largest study to date on hunter-gatherer lifespans in the journal Population and Development Review. They used real mortality data from many existing hunter-gatherer population groups, not theory or computational models. The result? Those who lived past age 15 had a remaining life expectancy extending to 68 to 78 years old, almost no different from modern Americans. Child mortality rates were more than 100 times higher, but for those who survived that period, the aging rate was no different from modern people. That was not a one-time result or exception of a lucky population group. That was a pattern repeated across many different societies. And if the data is not convincing enough, look at a specific skeleton. In 1908, in a rock shelter in France, archaeologists found the skeleton of a Neanderthal man who lived 56,000 years ago, who died at the age of 60 to 70. He had lost most of his teeth many decades before he died. The bone had regrown along the gums, and the other Neanderthals in the group had ground food for him, cared for him in his final years. Living to old age and being cared for by the community was not an invention of modern medicine. It was a feature of humanity even before we were fully modern humans. The right question, therefore, is not why they died early, but why the survivors were so healthy without any of the things we think are necessary. So if hunter-gatherers lived healthily to 70, then when did health begin to decline? The answer is not before modern medicine was born. The answer is 10,000 years ago, when we invented agriculture. And this is one of the most uncomfortable truths in all of human history. In 2011, Amanda Mummert and colleagues at Emory University published a comprehensive review in the journal Economics and Human Biology, synthesizing all studies on human health during the transition to agriculture. They used many different biological stress indicators: height, bone robustness, oral health, physiological stress markers on skeletons. The result? 19 out of 21 societies studied showed a clear decline in health after switching to agriculture. not in one specific geographic area, not at one specific historical time. Everywhere, Europe, Africa, the Middle East, Asia, South America, North America, no matter when or where humans began farming, the same pattern appeared. Height decreased, bones weaker, teeth worse, infectious diseases increased. The specific numbers are even more concerning. Lifespan in the Neolithic period dropped to 33.1 years old for males and 29.2 years old for females, lower than even the previous hunter-gatherers. Agriculture, what we call the great turning point of civilization, made each individual human less healthy. 3 mechanisms explain why, and all 3 operated at the same time. The first is a sudden narrowing of the diet. Hunter-gatherers ate hundreds of types of plants, animals, roots, seasonal fruits. When switching to agriculture, the diet narrowed to 1 to 2 types of grains making up the majority of daily calories. Micronutrient deficiencies became severe and systemic. Burbesk and colleagues in 2015 pointed out that famine, in the sense of the entire community starving at the same time, is a product of agriculture, not of wild nature. When crops failed, everyone dependent on those crops starved together. Hunter-gatherers never bet their entire livelihood on a single plant species. The second is infectious diseases. When humans began living concentrated in villages and living near livestock, they for the first time created conditions for viruses and bacteria to jump from animals to humans in a systemic way. Concentrated populations in small spaces, sharing water sources, living next to livestock manure, created transmission chains that could not exist in the mobile lifestyle of hunter-gatherers. Most of the major pandemics in human history originated from this period. The third is heavier but less diverse labor. Evidence from bones shows that farmers worked more strenuously than hunter-gatherers in repetitive ways, bending down, harvesting, grinding, creating accumulated stress on the spine and knee joints in patterns not seen in hunter-gatherer skeletons. They worked more, ate less diversely, and their bodies recorded all of that in their bones. The core paradox of agriculture is this: it produced enough food to support much larger populations, but each individual in that population was less healthy than their hunter-gatherer ancestors. Population growth does not mean health growth. These are 2 completely different things that we have confused for centuries, because we have called population growth progress while the health of each person was going in the opposite direction. Human health did not follow a straight line from bad to good throughout history. It had a major break 10,000 years ago, and modern medicine is trying to patch up what agriculture broke. That raises a question. If modern medicine is only patching, what did the root look like before it was broken? To answer that question, we do not need to look to the past. We need to look at the people who are still living according to that root, right now, on this planet. The people who are still living according to that root exist. They are not characters in history books. They are living, hunting, farming, and have the best hearts that science has ever measured in any population group on this planet. In 2017, a research group led by Hillard Kaplan and Gregory Thomas published results in the journal The Lancet after going to 85 villages of the Tsimane people in the Amazon, Bolivia, taking CT heart scans for about 700 adults aged 40 to 94 years old, then comparing the results with nearly 7,000 Americans of the same age. The result made the entire research group stop. 85% of Tsimane people had almost no risk of heart disease. Only 3% had moderate or high risk. In Americans of the same age, that number was completely reversed. Only 14% had almost no risk, while 50% had moderate or high risk. Coronary artery calcification in Tsimane people was 5 times less than in Americans. An 80-year-old Tsimane person had blood vessel age equivalent to a 50-year-old American. Dr. Gregory Thomas said directly, "Most Tsimane people live their entire lives without developing coronary artery calcification, and this has never been recorded in any previous study." Now think about what the Tsimane people do not have. They do not have hospitals, no statins, no cardiologists, none of the things we usually think are necessary for a healthy heart. What they have is hunting, farming, walking 6 hours every day, and eating what they grow themselves. And this is the part that makes this result truly astonishing. The Tsimane people have a high infectious disease burden by every modern standard, frequent exposure to parasites, bacteria, poor sanitation conditions. They are fighting many more pathogens than the average American. Yet their cardiovascular systems are still better than Americans, who are protected by statins, blood pressure monitors, and annual checkups. The Tsimane are not the only case. Herman Pontzer and colleagues studied the Hadza people in Tanzania and published in Obesity Reviews in 2018, showing the same pattern: obesity rate under 5%, average BMI 20.2 to 20.3, almost no metabolic disease, no gyms, no diet plans, no health tracking apps. This is not genetic luck. This is not a geographic exception. This is the human body operating exactly as it was designed. When placed in the right conditions, it was built to run on. The next question: what exactly are those conditions? The human body is not a machine that needs external maintenance. It is a self-operating system that evolved for 2 million years, provided you supply the right 4 things it was designed to receive. The first is continuous movement, but not gym exercise. Not 1 hour of gym then sitting for 8 hours, but low-intensity movement throughout the day, squatting, standing up from the ground, walking 6 to 16 kilometers, according to data from Leonard and Robertson on the San and Aish people. Those simple functional movements are not special in that they burn more calories, but in that this is the language the body is programmed to understand after 2 million years. 1 hour of gym then sitting still for 8 hours is a completely different type of movement, something the body has no map to process. The second is natural seasonal fasting, not intentional intermittent fasting with tracking apps and eating windows calculated to the minute, but naturally having times of fullness and hunger according to the seasons, conditions that activate AMPK and autophagy, 2 mechanisms the body uses to clean up damaged cells and regenerate tissue from within. When you eat continuously 24/7 with supermarkets always open and food delivery taking only 30 minutes, these 2 mechanisms are almost never activated, not because the body no longer knows how, but because it never receives the signal to start. The third is real food diversity. Not expensive superfoods packaged in plastic boxes with green labels, but hundreds of types of plants, roots, fruits, wild animal meats according to the seasons, each bringing a different micronutrient and fiber profile that none can replace the other. That diversity does not just nourish people, it nourishes the gut microbiome. And the gut microbiome, as we are about to see, is more important than any single food type we are trying to optimize. The fourth is unfiltered contact with nature. Real sunlight instead of LED light through window glass. Real dirt instead of sanitized floors. Microbes from the natural living environment instead of air filtered through air conditioning. Those things shaped the immune system for millions of years, and the immune system does not know how to operate optimally when missing them, not because it is weaker, but because it was never designed to work in a sterile environment. Those 4 things are not the latest health advice from some influencer on the internet. They are the default operating conditions the human body was designed to receive from 2 million years ago. We stopped providing them in the last 200 years or so, then were surprised when the body started breaking in ways our ancestors never knew. Among all the things we have lost since the hunter-gatherer era, there is one thing that is being lost in the most literal sense possible, and according to Aleksandar Kostic at Harvard Medical School, we cannot get it back. In 2021, Kostic's research group published in the journal Nature, volume 594, the results of a project that started from an unexpected source: ancient human feces preserved in dry rock shelters in Utah and northern Durango, Mexico, dating from 1,000 to 2,000 years old. The extreme dry conditions of those rock shelters preserved the microbial DNA inside, to the point that the research group could perform sequencing with unprecedented depth in the history of ancient microbiome research, up to 400 million DNA reads for a single sample. From those 8 ancient fecal samples, they reconstructed 498 medium and high-quality microbial genomes, then compared them with 789 modern human gut microbiome samples from 8 different countries. The result? Among 181 genomes with the strongest evidence of ancient origin from the human gut, 39% were species never described in any scientific database. 11% belonged to completely new genera. These organisms are not rarer in the modern human gut. They did not decrease, they disappeared completely. The clearest case is the bacterium Treponema succinifacans, present in all 8 ancient samples, at every geographic location sampled, but not found in any industrialized human gut samples analyzed in the entire study. Not rare, not hard to detect, not present. Kostic calls this an extinction event, and he says directly that these are things we cannot get back. Now, why is this more important than any numbers about lifespan or heart metrics? Because gut microbiome diversity is not just about better digestion or less bloating. It is the immune system. It is the first line of defense against pathogens. It is the wall preventing chronic inflammation from spreading into the blood and organs. And what Kostik discovered in Finnish and Russian children is even more concerning. Children in industrialized areas are much more likely to develop type 1 diabetes than children in non-industrialized areas, and Kostik identified specific microbes that he believes have interfered with proper immune education in early life. That time window when the immune system learns to distinguish friend from foe, learns not to attack its own body. Losing that education and the immune system begins to make mistakes that no medicine is designed to fix completely. Type 1 diabetes, obesity, allergies, autoimmune diseases, all skyrocketed in industrialized populations, all linked in many studies to loss of microbiome diversity, and all almost absent in populations like the Tsimane and Hadza people we just mentioned. The culprits are not hard to find. Broad-spectrum antibiotics used indiscriminately wipe out harmful and beneficial microbes without distinction. Ultra-processed foods lacking diverse fibers starve the microbiome. Excessive hygiene removes even the microbes the body needs to contact in order to learn how to function correctly. Kostik says directly about the cause. In ancient cultures, the food you ate was very diverse and could support a richer microbiome. But when you switch to industrialization and supermarket diets, you lose many nutrients that nourish that diverse microbiome. And once lost, there is no simple way to get it back. And this is where the story begins to contradict itself, because what killed those ancient microbes, in many cases, is precisely what we call one of the greatest achievements of modern medicine. But not everything the body needs can be measured by scales or counted by footsteps. There are three other things, completely invisible, that do not appear in any prescription, and are very likely deficient in the lives of most people reading these lines. The first is the absence of chronic stress, and this is the hardest to talk about of all the previous things because it has no specific shape to point to. Ancient people had short, acute stress, fleeing wild animals, finding food in scarce seasons, facing specific dangers, then it ended. Cortisol spiked to handle the threat, then returned to baseline when the threat passed. The body was designed for exactly that loop. Modern people have something completely different. Low-level chronic stress that never ends. Unanswered emails, next week's deadline, next month's debt, 24/7 news, threats with no specific shape and that never really end. Cortisol never returns to baseline. And chronic cortisol destroys the immune system, hardens blood vessel walls, suppresses deep sleep ability, and accumulates damage in ways so slow that we do not notice until it is too late. It does not kill you quickly. It grinds you down slowly, in ways no pill is designed to reverse completely. The second is an unbroken circadian rhythm. The human body was designed to sleep according to the sun, a system that operated stably for 2 million years before the light bulb was invented. Artificial blue light at night suppresses melatonin, signals to the brain that it is still daytime, disrupts the sleep cycle and disorders the entire hormone system in cascading ways that modern science is only beginning to fully understand. The important thing is not that you sleep less, but that you sleep the wrong way, and the body does not distinguish between those two things. It only records that the recovery cycle did not occur correctly, then continues to accumulate losses. The third is real social connection, and this is the most underestimated thing in the entire conversation about health. Hunter-gatherers lived in groups of 20 to 50 people, knew each other their whole lives, shared food, slept close together, cared for the sick together. That social structure was not just culture or tradition, it was medicine in the most literal sense. Sick people cared for by the community had higher survival rates than those who were not, and communities that built care into their social structure outlasted communities that did not. Evolution did not just select for healthier bodies, it selected for mutual caregiving behavior, and that behavior was strongly selected for over millions of years. Modern research confirms what ancient people knew instinctively. Chronic loneliness has a health impact equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Those three things are not in any prescription. No pill can replace the correct biological rhythm, real social connection, and the absence of chronic stress, because these are not symptoms to treat. These are the basic psychological and social operating conditions of the human species, completely broken in 200 years of industrialization, without anyone paying enough attention to measure the full losses. One thing must be said straight before continuing. Nothing in the previous parts means modern medicine is useless. Saying that would be irresponsible and wrong. To understand what modern medicine can really do, we need to understand what problem it was born to solve. Germ theory. The idea that infectious diseases are caused by microorganisms was not established until the 1860s. Before Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch, no one on Earth understood what really caused most of the diseases killing people in large numbers. That is the context to properly evaluate what modern medicine has achieved after having that piece of information. Antibiotics save lives in acute infections in ways nothing else can replace. Sepsis was once almost certainly fatal, even when the patient received the best possible care. Without antibiotics, it was almost always certainly fatal, and no herbs or lifestyle could change that. Surgery handles things the body cannot heal itself. Severe injuries, inflamed appendix, difficult births. Childbirth before modern obstetrics was one of the most dangerous things a woman could experience, with maternal mortality rates fluctuating from 1 to 3% per birth, and women often giving birth multiple times. Vaccines eradicated smallpox, nearly eradicated polio, and addressed most of the reasons the 30-years-old number existed. The clear pattern: modern medicine excels at acute diseases, infections, injuries, emergencies, and these are exactly the things ancient people really died from without effective treatment. But with chronic diseases, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, autoimmune diseases, lifestyle-related cancers, the story changes significantly. 85% of Tsimane people had almost no risk of heart disease without needing any pills, not because they had better medicine, but because they did not create the conditions for those diseases to develop in the first place. Born and Batotti in 2024 pointed out that the billion-dollar healthcare industry in rich countries only buys a few extra years of lifespan compared to hunter-gatherers without doctors, and the top 10 causes of death in rich countries are mostly metabolic diseases and lifestyle-related cancers. Modern medicine is treating the consequences of the wrong lifestyle, not the causes, like fixing a leaking roof without turning off the faucet still running on the ceiling. And this is the deepest irony of this entire story. Antibiotics, one of the greatest achievements of modern medicine, which has saved millions of lives from acute death, is at the same time one of the biggest culprits of the gut microbiome extinction event we just talked about. What saves us from death within a few days is quietly destroying what protects us from the diseases that kill us within a few decades. The strangest thing in all these studies is not what ancient people achieved. The strangest thing is that the human body has not changed. Your genes are almost identical to those of a hunter-gatherer 10,000 years ago. The biological machinery remains intact. The self-repair, self-regulation, self-protection mechanisms are still there, waiting to be activated by the right conditions. When the Tsimane people are placed in the right conditions, their bodies do exactly what they were designed to do, without anyone guiding them, without medicine, without doctors. Not because they are biologically more special than you, but because the software is running correctly on the right hardware, in the right environment it was written to operate in. That means the entire story in this video is not about the past. It is about the default software still running in you right now, running in an environment it was not designed to run in, trying to do its job with input conditions completely wrong compared to what it was programmed to receive. And this is where the real twist lies. Throughout 200 years of modern medicine, we have been asking the wrong question. We asked how to cure this disease, while the right question is what have we changed that makes the body no longer able to do what it still knows how to do. Those are two completely different questions, and the answers they lead to are also completely different. The answer to the second question does not lie in the lab or the pharmacy. It lies in the 10,000 years of decisions we call progress, and in your body, patiently waiting to be placed back into the right conditions to do its job, if we are brave enough to ask the right question. Go back to the opening image. You wake up with a headache, reach for a painkiller pill, take a sip of water, and then continue your new day in 45 seconds. That painkiller is a real miracle. It handles in 45 seconds what your ancestors had to endure all day, and never underestimate that. But that painkiller is also a symptom of a body that has been operating long enough in the wrong environment that a Tuesday morning headache has become a normal part of life that no one sees the need to question. You are standing at the end of a long line of people who had to do it the hard way before, so we do not have to, and we owe them for that. But in the process of creating an easier path, we left behind some things that the old path carried with it, and some of those, according to Kostick, are things we cannot get back. Ancient people did not live long because they lacked modern medicine. They lived healthily despite lacking modern medicine because they had not yet broken the things that modern medicine has to patch up. The next time you take that painkiller in 45 seconds, remember that your body is still running their software. The question is what environment you are running it in. If what we just talked about makes you look at your morning painkiller in a different way, please subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next videos, because there is so much more that we think we know about the human body waiting to be pulled out and reconsidered. Click the notification bell, because the right questions rarely appear on your homepage by chance.